Oh. All right, everyone, why don't we get started? This session has been recorded, and I will send you the recording and the slides later, okay? So let me introduce myself. I am Kevin Gunn. I'm coordinator of digital scholarship at Catholic University of America Libraries. And today I would like to talk with you about PIDs, commonly known as persistent identifiers, and how they can be used for enhancing scholars' research and improving their scholarly profiles. So we'll start off with sort of like a small picture, if you will, then I'll expand out and I'll give you lots of number of examples of what PIDs are and that. It's a universe, to put it very bluntly, out there. And you'll be, I think, somewhat overwhelmed, maybe, I don't know. And then after that, we'll end with setting up a quick ORCID account. If you don't know how to set one up, I'll show you how to do that. So, all right, so let us get started. So PIDs in the research information infrastructure. I sort of wanted to talk about letting scholars, as librarians, and even students know that this is a shifting environment that's happening out there. It's an expanding universe, and it's something that, I don't know, I suppose up to now you could sort of avoided it as a scholar, but now you're being required more and more to have, for example, an ORCID account, or to have your different, if you're doing a grant, you have to put in, you have to have grant funding record of that. There's a whole bunch of different things that happen with that. Excuse me, there we go. All right, so the ultimate objective, of anyone working in digital scholarship and scholarly communication is to support research and researchers. So we can do this by making sure that research results can be shared, validated, reused, and built upon to support further research. So we're just not little pods out there. We're connected to a much larger universe. So supporting research includes supporting the research information infrastructure. So what does that mean? It means the tools and services that researchers use when they enable them to spend more time doing research and less time managing it. If you have several open identifications and using different platforms, and that becomes much more cumbersome as a scholar to manage all of that. You can have the virtual building blocks, on which these tools and services will depend, is quite good, as well as such things as metadata and standards. And one aspect of that is today's topic, and that's persistent identifiers. So PIDs support a lot of this infrastructure and link to a lot of these different infrastructures. So why am I talking about this today? Well, there's a couple things that sort of push me to present on something here. So, there's a problem is that we use and advocate for persistent identifiers. We sort of have an idea what they are, but we aren't fully aware of what they are. We have an idea of what they are used for, reducing link rot by linking to scholarship, articles, people, data, that sort of thing. They allow for greater discoverability, but we don't see the larger picture. So here you have this quote from Adriana Romero Olivares. She was quoting a high-profile professor as stating, "We have no need for PIDs because we use DOIs." Well, DOIs are PIDs. And they point to particular objects, right? If you use something like ORCID, that points to people. And there's other things that point to organizations and that. So we'll get into that in a bit. So that was sort of thing that grabbed my attention. But something else as well, they're not fully understood as well. So if PIDs are often understood as what function they serve. So looking up this article in the database Library and Information Science Source on the EBSCO platform, I find both of these links are persistent for me because I'm at Catholic University of America, but have limited viability unless you belong to the Washington Research Library Consortium or your institution subscribes to the EBSCO database specifically. So furthermore, the WRLC proxy URL may possibly be a temporary URL. You just don't know, that exists over a period of time. So the permalink for EBSCO goes to the record on the EBSCO platform and not to the actual home of the article. So that's a limiting factor right away. If you want to cite something in a paper, it also brings out the whole problem of what if EBSCO goes out of business? What happens to these particular links on that? They do succumb to link rot? We don't know. So we need something much more permanent and persistent moving forward. So we have these two links here. And you have this particular, you have the same record, but with here you have the citation styles that are listed. And within EBSCO, they provide the citation styles, but these DOIs listed here are hidden behind a paywall. So unless you subscribe, you're not going to get access to it. So definitely we want something that's much more open with regards to open access with regards to our scholarly material. And certainly with us as researchers, through Orchid, we make our knowledge, our scholarship ourselves available to others to share. So you notice the Chicago style is done correctly because you can cut and paste the DOI and it will take you directly to the article that happens to be on the Springer website. So the point of persistent identifiers is to be open and traceable and well persistent. You know, that's what you want. So why do I mention this? I'm an editor for college and undergraduate libraries, and I'll also often I'll have librarians submit manuscripts, and there'll be a whole bunch of links like this with EBSCO or whatever in there as the source, and that's just an inaccurate way of putting that. So I often have to go through and correct those links to the proper DOI. So I thought, okay, they don't fully understand the purpose of what DOIs are. So there's the two examples that have crossed my attention. So our agenda today, so we'll just talk about the fundamentals of PIDs, and I'll try not to get into the technicalities of it, but just to give you an overview of it, and then show you how it sort of relates to the scholarly record and how your scholarly record lives within the larger research life cycle. And then we'll do a quick ORCID demo. So what is a persistent identifier? Well, a persistent identifier is they're unique codes used to identify people, places, and things in a nutshell. So I listed a number of examples up here, by no means exhaustive. So you can identify for researchers such as ORCID IDs, researcher IDs, Scopus IDs. You have identifiers for organizations, including GRID, that's the Global Research Identifier Database. You have Ringgold IDs, you have ISNI, that's the International Standard Name Identifiers. You have legal entity identifiers, and the identifiers that were provided by what the recently announced Research Organization Registry 2. That has come out. So identifiers, you also have identifiers for research objects and outputs. For example, you have DOIs. Everyone's familiar with the digital object identifiers, but do you know about ARCs? Do you know the archival resource key identifiers? There's handles as well as IGSNs. Those are international geo sample numbers as well. You also have research organizations. Those are called RORs. RORs and grids, Ringolds, that sort of thing. RORs only just began in 2019. So this is evolving, it's very recent. that we have these things, and we know that they're going to expand. We also have a thing called RAIDs, which deals with research activities and projects. So you have, these are groups of scholars who are sharing their material. And this also was created in 2019. So very recent. And last year, 2021, PIDs have been created for digital management plans. So you have a lot of things, PIDs, that are being created right across various platforms. So think of PIDs as connectors. They bring all these different things together, people, places, and things together.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question about something you just said?
Sure.
You said last year they created in 2021 something called digital management plans. Could you explain that?
The data management plans. Yes, absolutely. That's another thing that's becoming very, very essential and necessary when you supply, shoot for a grant, and that they want to know, what is your plan? What are you going to do with the data? How are you going to collect it? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to store it? Is it open accessible? They're going to ask you all these questions. So there's actually a website out there called the Data Management Plan. I think DMP tool. It's called dmptool.org. But just type in Google DMP tool, and that will take you there, and it'll walk you through how to set up a plan. They also have multiple examples of how to do that as well, and other organizations. So you can see how they put that up there. So,
and is that organized with our the Office for Institutional Research at CUA, or how do we do that?
I don't know 100%. Would have to ask Ralph, but I'm willing to bet yes is the answer.
Okay.
You know, because so many of these places are requiring grant institutions, and that they're just requiring this stuff, you know. So it's good to get in and take a look at what they have. Yeah, the DMP tool is a good website to start. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. And I'll tell you, each one of these things here up here, their own little conversations regarding what researchers can use. So there we go. All right. So here we have, you know, what is the objective here, right? It's all nice to geek out and talk about PIDs all day long, if that's your thing, but that's not the goal. It's the long-term accessibility of the scholarly record. That's the goal. You know, that's the big picture that we need to focus on. So I was originally supposed to do this presentation during Open Access Week in October. So I was updating my slides and that. And so I'm going to keep this in because I think it's also very important. So you're dealing with open access, and one of those dimensions of open access is the concept of fair. So you want to definitely have these attributes moving forward here: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. You know, you're sharing this stuff, you're letting people have it, and they can turn around and use it too. And PIDs are very much excellent for that. Connected PIDs enable fairness. So the more you know, they say that you can connect the dots between people, organizations, funding, and works, and that sort of thing. So you can see, you know, PIDs, you know, the point of PIDs is that they form a critical part of an emerging open infrastructure that will link people, places, and things through their associated metadata. So this infrastructure will in turn create efficiencies in information transfer, automate processes, and streamline reporting. So that is the big picture. And this is by Ed Pence. He's the executive director of Crossref. So Crossref creates DOIs. You can also use them to verify that article you're looking at is true, and it's out there. So that is just one player, if you will, in the larger scheme of things. want to give you a sense here, the broad applicability of PIDs. And I love this, this image here. It's not the brightest it can be, but it gives you a sense, well, what can you create PIDs for? And look at all this stuff, just quickly starting at the bottom and working your way around, grants, funders, materials, pre and postscripts of your articles, reviews, who's reviewed it. You can have that link to your paper, your manuscript, projects, dimensions of projects, collections, topics, compound objects, software that you create specifically for a project that can be put in there too. What protocols are you using in your research? This applies more to social sciences and hard sciences, but still as important. What sort of applications were you using? Of course, people that you're using, they're involved in that. Tables, figures, publication. You have errata, you have, let me move my thing here, you have corrections, and sadly, in this day and age, you have retractions. So you can link all those. So imagine saving yourself the time. You find a paper and you go in, take a look, and it's linked to a retraction. So you can read that and go, oh, I'm not going to use that because of that. That's a real time saver. And let's face it, it could possibly save you embarrassment moving forward. If you cite something that's that's been retracted. Yes.
Just a quick question. Oh, I think there's a question in the chat box that went in first, and then I'll ask after. But
all right. How do you get the information about people who've reviewed your work? Is this through the IP address of the person's computer? No, that is once someone has created a review for that, and that's usually done, reviews are usually within journals and organizations like that. They will usually have a DOI or something like that. So that could be used, something like cross-reference could be cross-referenced to that. So you do have that linkage moving forward. As an author, if someone's reviewed your article, for example, you can put that into your Orchid record, for example. So there's different ways that you can do that.
So a quick question. I don't know if there's a way to do this, Kevin, but these are probably having a lot of redundant connections depending on the authors and the relatedness of the projects, and maybe even if it's longitudinal, et cetera, et cetera. Are there graphical ways to observe the nomological net behind these connections? So you know how you can see, like, say, for example, you pull up one object and it's connected to multiple things, but suppose you're wanting to pull up like 15 objects and you want to know the interrelatability of those objects with other PIDs in this universe. Is there a way to graphically get that information, or has that not been developed yet?
I don't know what tool, if there is one out there that you would use for that.
Okay.
You're talking more network analysis.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there are tools for network analysis out there per se, but something that applies specifically to PIDs, I don't know.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean there's not something out there. Believe me, if you do find something, let me know. But definitely, that's a good question, how things can be linked together. When you go in and create your Orchid account, that's something that you use your Orchid ID to map it out to whatever else is out there in the universe. But okay, so information and metadata improves search and discoverability. We know this facilitates credit and recognition, and reduces errors in attribution, which is important, especially if you have a name or use different publications of your name. My stuff, my material out there is under Kevin Gunn, Kevin B. Gunn, KB Gunn. You get the idea. An Orchid account becomes necessary. So you have open PIDs such as DOIs, digital object identifiers. You have Orchid IDs, and you have RORs, RORs. Those are research organization registry. So they're identifiers, and they have each one of those has an additional benefits to them. So not only are they free to end users, they're also fully inoperable, resolvable and enable the creation of open, well-defined provenance information. And that's an important thing. Where did this information come from? And basically, where is it going? So here's the nitty-gritty. So breakdown of a PID. We've all seen this in doing our research, but it's worth noting, what exactly is that I'm looking at. So you have here in the center the domain, which is basically pretty straightforward. The next part, the prefix, if you will, is the directory indicators, that small number there, like who's exactly running it, is it cross-ref, that sort of thing. Then you have the registrant code as listed in here. So that could possibly be an organization or something like that. And then at the last little bit, you have that unique value that's selected by the registrant. So that becomes your personal number if you're doing an ORCID account, or in this case, this refers to the specific article that you're referencing. Just show a variation here. So you have an example where ORCID is slightly different here. So you have orchid.org, then you have the whole long number. That's a unique number just for you. Let's see, and I gave you a cross-reference example here as well. So here it is in nice colors. All right. So another example are DOI registries, like who's doing just the DOIs, and here you have all these folks here from all over the world. So we know about Crossref. I mean, I've known you use them, but did you know about DataCite? They just do data, and they're pretty cool. We have Area IT. I've never heard these guys before. The past year learned about them. You have the China National Knowledge Infrastructure. They're doing their own thing. You have these, entertainment identifier registry, and then the ISTIC and Wanfeng data looks like out of China. So you just have, these are just examples of where you can have these different DOI registries. So these registration agencies, if you want to call them that, they provide service to registrants. So they allocate DOIs, they register DOI names and that sort of thing. The registrants allow them to declare and maintain metadata and state data if necessary. This service encompasses quality assurance measures so that the integrity of the DOI system as a whole is maintained at the highest possible level. So you're able to deliver reliable and consistent results to users, day in and day out. All right. So I saw these statistics back on June 24th, 2020, almost 2 years ago, but I thought just gives you an idea, have these numbers expanded out in the past year and a half, and I'm willing to bet that they have. There's quite a bit here. People, places, and things. And of the things, there's much more than just DOIs and data sets. So they are expanding as we go out. So 9 million and counting ORCID IDs. Quite useful. All right, let's see. So here we go, big picture time. So I saw this, the Research Data Canada website, their report that they put out. And I said, oh, I'm totally taking this because I wanted to show you the complexity of all of this. So you have all these various links of these particular PIDs coming together. The publication repository at the bottom, moving on to all these different publication DOIs, data set DOIs, impacts, research ID. So you see all this interconnection, the researcher ORCID ID linked to the organization ID, these particular things. going all around. So this is sort of what you can have for like one person connected to another person. So there's a lot of networking going on here.
Kevin, real quick, is this an implicit hierarchical structure here, or am I just looking at an homological net?
No, you're looking at a basic net, and there is redundancy here. So you have a data set here.
Okay.
Where else? So publication DOI here and here, that sort of thing. Researcher, ORCID, and all that. And then that's how you can sort of get a picture of how things are linked together.
With the I'm trying to think about this. With the DOI registries, are the databases like cross-compatible? How does that work?
What do you mean by cross-compatible?
So if they have a DOI registry, right, in a different country with a database with a number of, I don't know, identifiers, right? Is the format of their DOI compatible with the format of a DOI that's found in another registry with another database? Is there some sort of regulation in terms of how that's been systematized globally, or is each country going to be different? Kind of like an example would be trade research. If you're looking at trade data, the databases tend to have different fields and different kind of like formats, maybe even different suffixes. So I'm wondering, is that the same kind of like system that happens, or is it really regulated across?
What I think the way to look at it is whatever the identifier is pointing to, it is important to have the correct identifier.
Yeah.
So whatever that, that particular object that you're pointing to, as long as it has an identifier, then it can be used and shareable.
So the vector itself is essentially what we're looking at. It doesn't matter what format it's in.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the whole, I mean, the whole point of having these identifiers is that they're shareable. I think is the takeaway. Regardless, there's a lot of emerging protocols as we talk within organizations. What are the best practices in that? And I'm sure that between different organizations, they would also have best practices about how they can go about sharing their data.
And there's not really a system in terms of how they pick out those unique identifiers, right?
I think that I mean, that gets back to the international best practices. Definitely you can go in and use Crossref or DataCite or something like that, and I would think someone in another country could do that as well and build from there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so for this particular one here, I just wanted to show this one show you the smaller picture here. So if you look at research and institutions at the top and the bottom, represented by these little symbols, and in the center you have the symbols for Crossref and DataCite and RAID and ORCID and the research organizations repository. So you have that. And you notice the arrows. If you start at the bottom, look at the research and institutions, first you go for funders, right? And who are those? And they have their own numbers, their PIDs. And then you go up to the top and who are researchers and institutions that are working on that. And you look at, and then it comes down to the other side at 3 o'clock. And you have, the data output and all that sort of thing. And you notice in the center, you have the IDs organizations who are managing all this stuff, keeping track of all this stuff for us. So that is quite neat. Now, I expand this out. And I'm going to show this out to you. So this is the PID optimized research cycle that we have here. And you'll notice at the bottom, I'm going to expand this out in a second. You have the actors and entities in the research cycle. So you have funding agencies and research performing organizations and research contributors and research output platforms. And then over on the side, you have the priority persistent identifiers and registries. So the registries, they're the ones that have the credence. So they're the ones that are checking it. So Crossref, for example, will give a unique DOI. If they're the author, they'll have you give your ORCID and put that in there. and that's sort of how they keep track of everything. Now let me just shoot over here. So can you see the website I just went to? Zenodo? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this out. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So here's and this is done by Morebrain. I just had to show this to folks because you're getting more and more complex as we move along here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go down to the bottom here. So right here. So I'm going to start right at the bottom with the idea of the grant application just to the left. So you have research and institutions that will pass PIDs for previous grants, outputs, organizations, people, and projects to grant application systems. And so the DOI, your ORCID, your WAR, your RAID, they'll be part of that process. And you look at the benefits, there's less manual data entry involved in this. There's more accurate data that's being transferred. And there's definitely more time for including contextual information moving through that. So if we continue up the left-hand side, up here. So you have the whole grant application and review process. So funders come in and they put their data about the grants and outputs and all that into that particular work. And you get, again, a lot of these, earlier, more accurate data and all that, but you also get easier review, selection, and recognition, that sort of thing. So that's good. All right. And if you continue up the circle here, you have, if you're lucky enough to get a grant, then you have the funders will register the DOIs for new grant metadata. So then other researchers can see what you've got, what was successful, and then say, hey, maybe we can emulate that in that particular way. So some benefits are globally unique grant IDs and metadata to aid reporting. You have authoritative metadata, which is important, and connections to other PIDs to aid project management. So we're back to, the data management project plans and that sort of thing. And then you simplify communication of compliance with various policies, open access if you have to do that, and DMPs as well. You'll notice at the top here, you have the grant award as well. So institutions will now get involved and they'll ingest the data about grants and associated people and organizations and that sort of thing. So they get, more accurate data, they get time, effort savings as well, and they get improved reporting from there. Now, on the right-hand side here, you have project registration. So RAIDs get involved, institutions register the RAIDs for projects and they add or update links to associated grants, equipment, people, and organizations. So there's another layer that becomes involved here. So you notice that at this point, there's improved visibility of collaboration across institutions and countries. And when you look at the next one's output submission, so you finally get those reports and that sort of thing. So researchers share their ORCID ID when submitting new outputs and connect to ROR IDs for institutional affiliations and grant DOIs for funding. So for benefits of that, mentioned them before, but also easier sign-in, easier APC management. If authors have to pay charges in order to get published, that sort of thing, you can keep track of that. And of course, there's easier review, selection, and recognition. When we get to output publication, we have publishers and repositories will ingest these data about grants, people, projects, and organizations and link to outputs. So again, you reduce administrative overhead for publishers. There's an improved author experience moving forward. And at the end of the day, you get richer metadata to aid discovery, analysis, and reporting. So as a librarian, that's a really good thing. And so looking at this, you'll notice that, output registration, of course, articles are the most common one out there. So you get the metadata through digital object identifiers, DOIs. So people just be able to use that metadata to aid analysis, citation, discovery, and reporting. And those associated entities will streamline reporting and analysis. So you can, at that point as a scholar, you have greater ability to track, reach, and track the reach and impact of your content. Then last, you have the contents notification. So PIDs registries will send automatic updates of new publications to institutions and funders. So at that point, you have that whole cycle that goes around and illustrates just what's involved as you go through the process. There, I'm going to go back here. All right, so working with your scholarly profile, I wanted to mention this very briefly. Things that you can do that would help you, improve, get your scholarly profile, let people know you're out there. One thing that's very important for you to do is to maintain your profiles moving forward, whether it's in Orchid or in Google Scholar or whatever. It's good to keep those updated. You definitely want to be consistent in citing your work across platforms. Yes, use your full name or variation of that. Orchid, like I said, brings it all together and it's open accessible, so it's quite good. When you're putting this material into, for example, Orchid and that, you want to keep discoverability in mind. You want people to be able to find your scholarship. Whatever your Twitter name is, your Orchid, your DOIs of publications, it's good to bring them as closer together in that. So Orchid allows you to bring in your Twitter name and other platforms that you use. So it's all together in one spot. So, and then yes, cross-link your different profiles, as I mentioned. And of course, I highly recommend using Orchid. You're able to much easily keep track of the research that you've put out. So moving through Orchid here, so you have the whole idea of interoperability here. So you have you in the center here, you're the researcher, and you can collect and connect with the funders, with the publishers to assert authorship, and employers to assert affiliation. So yes, Orchid continues to evolve as well. They've just recently have added ROAR to their profiles for registering research organizations, and they continue to expand out to and using and implementing these various work of these different registries in that. Okay, so that is the slides presentation here. Let's do that. Does anyone have any questions about that? It's the view from 30,000 feet, I'm telling you right now. There's so many individuals that have spent time working just on DOIs or just in research organizations on registries and stuff like that. So it's very much a big picture scenario I painted today. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so let's move on. And this is a very quick setup for Orchid. If you haven't done one, I highly recommend it. It's very simple and it's free. So you want to register right here. So you go to orchid.org, and this will set you up right here. So I just click on that, register now. And you can go through and do all your personal data, your security and notifications, visibility, and terms like that. So it's great about this because you have one of the great features I like about Orchid is you let people know what you've done. And you can also let them know in different ways. So you can keep stuff tagged on here, catalog, but you don't necessarily have to share a data set, particular data set with the world. You can just keep it to yourself, or you can share it with only a select number of people. So ORCID's set up to be maximum flexibility. ORCID is very interesting. By the way, ORCID stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID, in case you're wondering about that. The organization is great because they are committed to being open access. They're committed, it says so in their constitution, that they'll never ever sell your information or anything like that. So very useful. So here it is. You set up your ORCID account and you go through the process. And let me just do this. So in this case here, I already have an account. So I'm just going to sign in. So I'll go through the process and there we go. So now I am in my ORCID account. You'll notice the thing they throw at you right away. There you go. Yes, the orchid.org/register. I just do orchid.org. That's the main page because they want you to register when you come in. They wanted to make it so simple for you moving forward. So I really appreciate that. So here's the thing. The first thing you'll notice is the left-hand side here of your unique number. So you can put this anywhere. When you send it, your articles to get published, you can send that along. They'll often, publishers will request it. Say, do you have an ORCID account? Get one. You'll still get published if it's in a particular publisher platform, but they do encourage it. So you can click on that. You can find the scholars, other research that they've done. So you have this set up, and what I've gone through is to put in my emails. Let me go down the left-hand side here. My blog that I've got, my staff webpage, and other social links in that. If I wanted to do Twitter or whatever, I could do that as well. So I just wanted to put these up here. I do have a research ID that haven't used in a while, but I created for another project, and Scopus as well. Both of these are subscription-based databases. So if your institution doesn't subscribe to them, they're kind of useless, but they are helpful in that regard if you are working in there. So it links, like I said, different platforms across. You also can tell people what you like to do in that. So I'm in humanities, digital humanities, pedagogy, that sort of thing, in whatever countries. So you can spend some time doing that. Up here, you can put in your official name, and then you can do your AKAs, alias names, Batman, if you want. Here I put Kevin in here, but Kevin B. Gunn I've put as well, and other things, other names that you use across the board. If you look at employment, you can put that down, let people know who you are. If I just click over here, my affiliation, I can let everyone know. I can let trusted parties know, or just me if I wanted to keep that part of it private. Let's see. Go here. My education as well. You can share as much or as little as you like. So invited positions and distinctions. These are things that you can let people know. Memberships and services that you can let people know as well, what you belong to. The funding, and this can be, I've never had funding, so I've never had to worry about it. But if you do get funding in that, this is something that you can sort of brag about. You know, hey, I got a grant. How about you? That sort of thing. And also the works that you've put out there. Let's see. You have, including some great features here. You can export your works, set visibility, delete stuff. You can put a lot of different things in here. I have books, edited books, journal issues, all these different objects that you can put in here. Let's do this. Okay. So I can click on add here, and you can notice, what do I want to do? I can add a DOI. Hey, how about that? A PubMed ID, that's another one. Or you can do it manually. Here, let's do it manually. And if I had a particular object, you know, what's your object type? They list all this stuff here. Dictionary entry, you know, manuals, newspaper articles, conferences, intellectual property. Cool. They continue to expand a lot of this out. Research techniques, software, and that sort of thing. So it's very, very exciting what you can do with these. All right. And let's see, we did that and that. So that's basically a quick overview of why I recommend ORCID and that. So at this point, the presentation is over. I hope I didn't overwhelm you. I can send the slides and the recording to you when they're available. So do you have any questions? Oh, you got a question? None here. Thanks, Misty. I appreciate that. Thanks. Okay. Well, like I said, if you think of something later, send me an email. Let me just put my email in chat. It's very simple. It's gunn@cua.edu. There you go. And we know we can start having a conversation. Like I said, the whole research infrastructure of this is constantly changing. It's evolving. More protocols, best practices, stuff like that is being created all the time. So it is time consuming to keep up on all of it. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing there. There we go. And that, so, all right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming out, and we'll probably have new workshops in the fall. So if you're back here in the fall, hope to see you. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.